Most federal agencies are making massive cuts this year. These cuts have a greater impact than most people realize. This includes threatening public safety. Then we have a judge who's not sure we should reinstate probationary workers that were fired earlier this year. How will it impact you? Let's get into it. The Trump administration has been shaking up federal agencies. This includes the Forest Service. President Trump and DOJ have said their aim was to cut waste. But if you ask the employees over there, it's causing chaos. How? By adding red tape to slow down the contract process to make it more difficult to buy things like firefighter equipment or toilet cleaning equipment. Here's an example. One Forest Service employee said getting a janitorial contract approved used to take a day and a half. Now, with DOJ's reviews, it takes 6 weeks. The result? You know those pit toilets? The hole in the ground, the outhouse, those are overflowing. One employee called it a biohazard. You have trash piling up. You had one employee in his 70s, he brought his power washer from home, and now he's knocking off the poop from the wall to try to get that place a little bit clean. It's not in their job description to do that, but they take a care and an interest towards the agency, so they're going outside of their job description in order to clean things up, make it better for the guest while they're having issues ordering the equipment. If you take a peek at the president's 2026 budget request, you would see that they're trying to slash service operations and management by $800 million. Instead, the goal is to shift away from recreation and focus on timber and mining. If you didn't know this, the government actually generates revenue off of the timber operation. They made close to $200 million last year when it comes to timber. So they want to increase those numbers. The top national forests that produce the timber include Alaska, Pennsylvania, and one in Virginia. Now, as you may know, it takes a purchase card to make a purchase in the government. It's a novel concept, I know. So DOJ has essentially revoked those purchasing cards. This reminds me of what they did at the Department of Defense when they lowered the credit amount to $1, so you couldn't really afford to do anything. They didn't want to turn off the cards over there because if you did, you would have to disrupt a lot of processes. But they just wanted to stop any and all spending. And if you did have to spend, well, there's a whole other process that you have to do in order to justify that, right? So let's take an overview of the Forest Service. 193 million acres, $800 million budget cut, 40% staff cuts at some locations, and a 25% timber production goal. This is all about DOJ's mission to streamline the government. It's what the Trump administration wants. But instead of streamlining it, we have employees here saying it's grinding to a halt because they're adding all these layers of review. It used to take 15 minutes to order something. Now, you have to get it approved through GSA. You have to get it approved through DOJ. And doesn't the E in DOJ stand for efficiency? A lot of this that we're hearing from this agency, it doesn't sound efficient. One contracting officer said the process has changed 15 times since Trump took office. That sounds inefficient, but they were probably just learning as they go because the members of DOJ had no understanding of the Forest Service until they got there. So they can mess things up, they can break processes, they can remove processes, and then they can always fix it later in the future, regardless of the cost, regardless of how long it takes. One worker said a contract to plant 1 million trees for reforestation has been delayed, and those trees could die if they're not planted soon. Another employee said that DOJ denied funding for sniffers. I don't know what a sniffer is, but apparently it's a device that can detect smoke to keep firefighters safe. And then we have other locations that have experienced a 40% loss in their offices. Now, you also have the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. They oversee the Forest Service. They're bracing for layoffs as well. It's really surprising that some of the fire staff, the people that manage and respond to wildfires, they were impacted. To me, this category would be protected under public safety. But a lot of these folks ended up resigning. This includes fire crews, fuel specialists, and support personnel. Right before we enter the summer months of the wildfire season. And what we're likely to see is delayed response times. And when they do respond, it'll be with less people, probably making it less effective. So as you can see, the entire agency has been impacted. And this results in the Forest Service having to ask other people, like secretaries and technicians, to go out there and manage the trash. Pick up the needles, because there's drug use at a lot of national forests. So you got needles out there. They got to pick those up. Deal with the feces. Deal with all of that, even though that's not their job. That's not their main job. They actually have a job where they manage correspondence. They manage administrative tasks. Now they're outside with gloves, hopefully managing all that waste. And this is what a lot of organizations do. You have a team, and even though your team is light, you're missing people, you still need to get the mission accomplished. You still try to improve your workplace, and you have to shift. Ideally, you cross-train. But if there's not enough time for cross-training, you throw people out there and hope they figure it out. Now, hopefully, this isn't a legal concern later down the line. One employee said, "We're too scared to say no because Doge's cuts have created a climate of fear." And it gets worse because if you remember the great probationary purge where you had tens of thousands of workers that were fired for supposedly poor performance, but in reality it wasn't. You had a judge that reinstated them. Then you had an appeals court judge that said, oh wait, no, you can't do that. You don't have to reinstate them. Now we're hearing more on that topic, right? So there's a judge on Tuesday that basically said there are gigantic political costs to throwing out so many employees. But then he suggested if reinstatement was the right solution. Instead, he suggested that voters might have the final say. So what does he mean? What is he trying to say here? When I read the words, voters might have the final say, that basically means that if you disagree with a political policy, you ensure that politician isn't reelected, or you make sure that politician isn't in office. In this situation, the president's going to be here for the next 3.5 years, but we have an election in Congress next year, 2026 in November. Is he basically suggesting that if the people do not like this, that they vote accordingly November 2026? That's what it means to me. Now, despite the probationary purge, the Forest Service did reinstate a lot of their fired probationary workers to their credit, but they're still short when it comes to their fire staff, when it comes to the wildfire fighting season. Now, you have cards frozen over there. You got billions of dollars leaving the agency, and unfortunately, we got some toilets that are overflowing. So you would be thinking, with the state of this agency, there's no way that they're hiring. They're frozen with every other federal agency, right? Until July 15th, right? Well, if you jump on usajobs.gov, you can see that they are hiring. This is a law enforcement officer job that's hiring in many areas with a salary between $49,000 to $81,000 a year. The agency likely had to get an exemption to post this job. Even though it falls under public safety, that's probably what they're using here to get this job posted. You still have to do extra paperwork in order to get it up here. So a lot of people don't realize that. They think, well, immigration, public safety, law enforcement should be easy. It's not really easy from the HR perspective. Now, in response to these cutbacks that we're seeing, we also have local government, let's say state, county, local government is offering to step in. This first happened in California. They realize for their national forest, they don't have enough people. There's a lot of work to be done. So you have state government helping. You also have a nonprofit organization called Sierra Forever. They're helping staff up the visitor centers. They're helping maintaining the trails. And this approach probably will not be unique to California. You could easily see it happening in places like Virginia with a large national forest, also Pennsylvania. You're gonna see a lot more, let's say, state workers and volunteers that come out there and try to preserve and keep their parks operational. As the Forest Service continues to try to figure this whole thing out, there are a few main takeaways. Employees are updating their resumes, morale is mixed, and there's a belief that centralization of decision-making could mirror what's happening at the Department of Interior with top-down control from DC. As all of this unfolds, a lot of people have their eyes to the future. What does 2026 bring? Some agencies will be losing money. Most agencies will be losing billions of dollars, and a select few will be gaining billions of dollars within their budget. This is important because the budget will influence hiring and how they're able to update their systems and better serve the public. If you're interested in that, the winners and losers, then I want you to check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.